Chinmaya Trust, Mr. K.S. Vijay Kumar, to honor our esteemed guests with a shawl. Thank you, sir. Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us Shri Sai Deepak, a dynamic and accomplished litigator, practicing as an arguing counsel primarily before the Supreme Court of India and the High Court of Delhi. Sir is known for his unwavering dedication to justice, sharp legal mind, and vibrant presence both inside and outside the courtroom. Sir has been part of several landmark cases of commercial and constitutional significance before the Supreme Court and the High Court of Delhi. Sir is the author of the bestsellers India, that is Bharat, Coloniality, Civilization, Constitution, and India, Bharat and Pakistan, the constitutional journey of a sandwiched civilization. We have a packed auditorium awaiting your talk, sir. Please, sir. Over to you, sir, please. So we are also fortunate to have Sai Deepak sir's mother also amongst the audience. Welcome you, ma'am. Father also, I'm sorry. Sai Deepak sir's father and mother, parents, both the parents have joined us. Welcome you, sir. Welcome you, ma'am.
Just a clarification, they are my in-laws. Important clarification, but still father and mother in-law. Namaskaram. I think this is my second opportunity to engage with an audience put together by the venerated Chinmaya platform. I am grateful for this opportunity. In terms of timing and relevance, I don't think we could have had a better timing considering what's going on in the country. And as always, which better organization than the Chinmaya mission to put together this fantastic event, celebrating the anniversaries of two spiritual giants produced by Bharat. I was asked to speak on a slightly different subject, perhaps touching upon Guruji's life. I wanted to somehow combine certain aspects of his life and his message with the times we live in. Thank you. Thank you. The times we live in and the serious challenges that beset Dharma at this point. But before I proceed to speak on the topic, perhaps a few clarifications and disclaimers are in order. One, I don't see myself remotely as any form of cultural ambassador or activist, and I say this with no iota of false humility. Unfortunately or fortunately, I'm still not capable of humility, so there is no question of false humility. Second, I have not embarked on this journey with any sense of larger mission, but perhaps like any other average Hindu or a practicing conscious Hindu, I'm more interested in protecting certain aspects of my childhood and culture which I have grown up with and benefited from. So this comes more from a narrow, selfish perspective of at least being able to pass on what I have benefited from to the next generation. Therefore, all the superlatives with which I was described earlier in the introduction perhaps don't sit well with me. They must be reserved for people who are doing this job full time, who are doing this in the traditional way, and who are doing this without the kind of visibility that social media has given me, staying away from the limelight. So the hope is that I use this opportunity and this platform to perhaps convey a larger message which others who may not have the benefit of in terms of access to such a huge platform and the audience that it has world over. I'm usually known for being candid and outspoken when it comes to some of these subjects. I will trust the maturity of the audience to be able to receive what I have to say. And I genuinely hope that even if the feedback is harsh, it is seen in constructive, positive light. Because ultimately we are here for a cause. And the dharmic cause is always bigger than individual egos, is my limited perspective. One, if I have to outline the larger challenges that our community is faced with, a lot of people look outward in terms of looking at the society, looking at, let's say, the state of our institutions. But perhaps the one institution that deserves the maximum amount of scrutiny, attention and care is the institution of the family. If that unit is not preserved, the value of that unit is not preserved, the integrity of that unit is not preserved, then what exactly are we fighting for is the simple question that we must ask ourselves. Because Hindu thought has placed significant emphasis on the institution of family for multiple reasons, because all our sanskaras revolve around the institution of family, they revolve around our ancestors, and they revolve around the amount of care and attention that must be paid to the most important exercise or obligation, which is the upbringing of a child. So in my view, this is significantly the institution that is also under attack from outside and equally under attack from within, because we have started paying less and less attention to this institution. Before I speak of Bharat and before I speak of the importance of the family institution for Bharat, I'll perhaps give you two stark examples to make my point better, in the hope that you will understand what is it that Bharat has done right, which the West has done wrong. I have had the misfortune or whatever it is of visiting the West often. On more than one occasion, at least since 2009-2010. And with each passing visit, I come back with a greater sense of pessimism and a greater sense of negativity of the quality of energy in the West. In my view, over the last decade or even more, assuming that there was an element of sattva in the West, it has become significantly tamasic. Because that civilization and that society has put a lot more faith in technology than in spirituality and family, and it has significantly destroyed the institution of family, a sense of community, and it has chosen to put its faith in two different aspects. One is technology, the second is modern medicine, and which is exactly why it has become a pill-popping society full of depressed people with no sense of identity whatsoever, with no ability to feel, experience or show empathy. So all those values which make us human beings have taken a backseat. And the more I interact with people from the West, at least the ones who have not been exposed to the beauty of Bharatiya spiritual wisdom, I find them to be sanitized mechanical robots, incapable of human transaction in a human way. I don't say this with disdain, I say this with sympathy and empathy. Because at the end of the day, Sanatana Dharma doesn't teach you to enjoy at the downfall of any person or any civilization. And I'm not trying to showcase this to show how great Bharat is and how poor the West is. According to me, every society and every civilization has something to offer. It just so happens that because the Bharatiya civilization has been around at least for 7,000 years according to our knowledge, and perhaps even longer, with time we will know, all the mistakes that a human society is capable of making, we have made, and we have learned those lessons. And those lessons have been captured by way of tradition, those lessons have been captured by way of codification of the Veda, those lessons have been captured by way of codification of Vedanta. So the journey from the Veda to the Vedanta itself, according to me, is the journey of human evolution in terms of consciousness. Which is why if you look at our scripture, it doesn't emphasize on the greatness of any particular race. Contrary to popular perception and propaganda, the word Arya has never been used in a racial sense or an ethnic sense in our scripture. It has been used from the perspective of consciousness to say who is an ideal person. What are the characteristics of an Arya? And we believe that those characteristics are universally applicable. We don't expect people to convert or to aspire to be Indians by ethnicity for them to be Hindus by heart and spirituality. There's a difference. There is no ethnic supremacy involved whatsoever. There is no racial supremacy involved whatsoever in the way we think. Because if you have to convert to some other Abrahamic faith, you have to aspire to become someone who is similar to someone from the Middle East or from Europe in order for you to adopt their culture and their faith system. That is not necessary here. Which proves why fundamentally this civilization and its faith systems, in particular Sanatana Dharma, are capable of universal application much more than anybody else. So here's the example or the stark irony. The West is completing its cycle of having experienced material prosperity to the fullest possible extent, and is now going towards not a utopian future but a dystopian future, because it has chosen to make technology the sole purpose of its existence and the only means of its salvation, without any spiritual mooring whatsoever. In the process, significant segments of the West are looking for answers outside the West's worldview, and therefore they come to Bharat hoping to get answers here. Now Bharat has finished one cycle, because I think while we may be inheritors of a great civilization, we have gone through a significant process of decay and we're again on the rise. But now is the time for us to take a decision. Do we want to follow the model of the West and repeat the mistakes of the West and go through the very same cycle? Or do we find a way to combine our civilizational learnings with whatever the West has to offer, which is good? The one thing that the West has to offer, which I think we can certainly draw from and learn from, is the ability to organize. And as a society, the Hindu community has understood organization for sure, but I think it has failed to rediscover its organizational strength. And according to me, that strength was revived in the mid-19th century when we started sending people like Swami Vivekananda and others to the West. And then we realized that we need to start creating networks in order to spread the message, and also to offer certain solutions to people in the West who had begun to feel the emptiness of the Western journey. Surprisingly, when we are best positioned to offer these lessons to the West with a certain degree of confidence after securing our independence, after reaching a certain economic position, it is Bharatiyas who are suffering from serious self-doubt. When we should be offering solutions to the rest of the world, we are bogged down by fundamental questions of the very utility, usefulness and purpose of our civilization. It is such a curious position that the spiritual giants of this country would have wanted us to be confident civilizationally and prepared spiritually to respond to the challenges of modernity and to respond to the problems faced by the West and the rest of the world. And that is precisely the time Bharat is bogged by severe internal problems. I am not sure I understand or even relate to the concept of a superpower. I understand the geopolitics of it. I understand the economic reasons for it. And I understand that we live in an extremely hostile neighborhood, perhaps among the most hostile in the world. We are not exactly surrounded by friends. So while we must aspire to achieve a certain position of strength that allows us to safeguard the bijam or the knowledge that we have developed for centuries or thousands of years for that matter, we must also find a way to help the world hit a reset button. Because I think no other civilization has the calm composure to offer solutions to the problems of the world as the Bharatiya civilization. Because we don't suffer from a need to expand. We don't suffer from a dying need to conquer. We don't suffer from a dying need to convert. We have no such problems whatsoever. We are perfectly comfortable existing with others along with their identities, as long as they are comfortable letting us be who we are. It is precisely for this reason, in order for you to be able to deliver this message of peace and a message of universal brotherhood, you must attain a certain position of strength, because the world is not going to listen to a weak person who does not have the ability to deliver his message. So it's like this. Assume for a moment that you're a beggar standing outside Ambani's home, and you're trying to give advice to Ambani on economic aspects. He will say, "Who are you? Get lost. Why should Ambani even take you seriously?" Unless you're a guru, that's a different reason altogether. There is a difference between a poor person and a renunciate. So today, Bharat cannot hope to go around with a begging bowl in the hope that the world will listen to its spiritual wisdom. But Bharat did that successfully even when we were colonized, when we were sending out spiritual giants. But today we have the dual advantage of speaking to them in a language they understand from a position of relative strength, and also with this deep spiritual wisdom that we are uniquely positioned to offer. Therefore, strength for us is not an end in itself, it's not a goal in itself, it's not a destination in itself, it is a means to a larger end. That is what is going to make the Bharat story for the next 100 years very different from the story of the West or the Middle East for that matter, in terms of what it has to offer, what is its vision, and how it seeks to achieve it. The dissonance here, or perhaps the divide in our heads, is this: how do we reconcile the inherent peaceful nature of the Sanatani with the need to compete with an aggressive world outside? I think when most people come to such congregations, their BP goes down automatically. Their aggressive instincts go down automatically. Because this is a vacation from the rest of the world. And going back from here into the real world is a real job. Because you're not meeting like-minded people who share your values. You're meeting people who are constantly trying to poke you and needle you in different ways. And therefore, you're reluctantly having to summon aggression without wanting to be aggressive. I am only trying to convey to the Hindu community that this is a necessary part of our learning curve. And how we choose to take decisions in this phase of Bharat's history and Sanatana history will determine the way of the future. If we turn out to be people with soft stomachs, with lack of conviction in the message that we have to deliver, and the strength to deliver it and stand by it, my hunch is that what can be a moment of opportunity in Bharat's history after thousands of years could perhaps turn out to be the most catastrophic moment in its entire history. Because as much as there is room for optimism, there is significant room for concern. I won't use the word pessimism because I am not one. So, what is it that we can do through these platforms? First, address the internal confusion as to who we are and where we come from. No society can aspire to be a Vishwaguru with this kind of confusion within its head as to who we are and where we come from. A confused person can certainly not be a guru to anybody else. So, my limited, humble suggestion to organizations such as this and others is identify the challenges within and find a way to collaborate with each other, putting organizational egos aside in the hope of working for a larger cause, because no single organization can achieve this task on its own. We will need to work together. That is the magnitude of the problem. It is not just state based or it is not just region based, it is national and international. So we will need to work together. 2, there are 3 different points within the Hindu society which present a fantastic entry point for the mischievous person outside. Jati, gender, and Janajati, which is environment and tribal identity. These are the 3 entry points for them to try and weaken the Hindu society. If we do not replace a sense of victimhood with a sense of pride in everybody's identity, every victimized identity is a potential adversary to the Sanatani identity. So we have no other option but to invest heavily in the society, and I understand that goes against perhaps the grain of being a spiritual seeker. You may have come into this particular fold to go deeper within, but perhaps that is not the time yet. The next 25 years, which according to me is perhaps the old school definition of a generation, must be used by every capable person, capable Sanatani, to invest in the society as much as possible in the hope that the message of moksha that it has to offer reaches the maximum possible people and the maximum possible people benefit from it. So this is not the time for us to recede within our small corners, but it is time for us to invest actively in the society, which I suspect is perhaps the primary reason for the setting up of this organization. And the fact that someone from this great land, from this Parashurama Kshetram, successfully went out and championed the cause of Sanatana Dharma must be a cause of angst for a lot of people here. So this state and this land requires significant heavy investment, because all the surviving energy centers of Bharat are in the south of Vindhyas. And what better places than Karnataka, and the land that is known as the Trilinga Desha, which is the Telugu Desha or Andhra Desha, along with Tamil Nadu and Karnataka for that matter, these states represent perhaps those pristine islands and enclaves of Sanatana Dharma after having faced barbaric invasions for close to 1200 years, or at the very least 800 years, followed by a systematic colonization. I am not sure of the history, but it is said that Manu came from the south. I could be wrong. According to me, revival of Sanatana Dharma starts from the south, because it is the south which is under significant attack, where there are conscious efforts and concerted efforts to divide the south from the rest of Bharat. I don't believe in the north-south divide whatsoever. Having lived in Bengal, in undivided Andhra Pradesh, in bifurcated Andhra Pradesh, in Tamil Nadu, in Delhi, I see only Bharatiyas everywhere, with synthetic artificial divides being imposed on us. So I think it's extremely crucial that the South responds to this challenge in the best way possible, in the calmest way possible, and leads the way forward. Because thanks to the quirks of history, the North has been deprived significantly of its energy centers. Therefore, while there is still a certain degree of passion left there, there is a lot of passion, there is a lot of josh, but it does not have the spiritual framework for it, because those institutions have been significantly destroyed by the sword and through conversion, both. So whenever I see somebody taking a tone of arrogance with members of the North, or members of the North looking down upon us, let's say members of the South because we are all us, I laugh at both people's stupidity. Because we survived significantly because the North bore the brunt of the invasions, and therefore we have a duty to spread the message back to those people who knew it once. I am not saying that we haven't suffered invasions at all. I am acutely aware of the history of certain padayatoms here. But relatively we have been safe. Today the purest form of Sanskrit and Vedic teachings survive in the south, other than Kashi. So if you look at the magnitude of the problem, it is individual, it is familial, it is societal, it is regional and national. Ask yourself honestly, which organization can handle this entire task on its own? Not possible. Certainly not possible. So perhaps I will use this opportunity to float an idea. I hope it doesn't sound radical. I just hope that people find value in it. I think it's time that we have a unified Dharma Sansad, or a Hindu Congress of sorts, where, notwithstanding the different paths that each organization may subscribe to under the stewardship of their respective gurus, a common minimum program must be forged for us to identify the threats that we face across the board. When you choose to do that, communities will first start talking to each other. Those who are in need of resources and support will get it from others. They will not find themselves fighting a lonely battle, because the biggest curse of being a Hindu is that your battles are always lonely. You're fighting alone in your office space, you're fighting alone in your college spaces, you're fighting alone in schools, you're fighting alone on social media, and you're always fighting your political battles alone. I have no interest in delivering a political speech. However, the unfortunate reality is that politics is unfortunately and has unfortunately dictated the course of Dharma over the last 75 years or more. So there is no other option but to speak of both. Rest assured, I will not campaign for any party, but I will certainly campaign for Sanatana Dharma. Because I know how not to put the horse before the cart, or rather the cart before the horse. I see everybody else as simply being a special purpose vehicle for the larger message, and the larger message is of Dharma. So everybody is merely a nimitta, a resource, a vehicle, an instrument, and nothing beyond. A lot of people over the last 10 years are very comfortable with certain political outcomes because their vision is limited to the today and the now, whereas the other side is investing in the future, and the future is represented by your children. And if you want an example of how your children can be weaponized, look no further. Just look in the direction that you're always looking, the West. Their campuses and schools are on fire. Last week I spent about, I think from the 1st of May to the 5th of May, rather 30th of April to the 5th of May, I was in Silicon Valley to deliver a lecture. The scenes that were being aired on television on what's happening in American campuses or on American campuses was devastating. They were devastating because it almost felt as if that country is in the midst of a civil war, where the state is on one side and students are on the other side. This is not a distant scenario for us because we already saw it in 2019. We saw this in 2020. And my hunch is, post June 2024, we'll see it even more. So please monitor and supervise your children, because they are the future ambassadors of Dharma. But if they lose faith in their identity and they start questioning it, all these conversations are useless. I don't see the point in investing in the past. I am trying to use the past as an investment in the present and the future, in the hope that we know what we have done right, and more importantly, we know what we have done wrong, so that we don't repeat those mistakes. That is the very purpose of history. I assume quite a few people will have questions here. I am told that my session ends at 12 o'clock, and usually I give at least 50% of my time for questions and answers. So the rest of the 15 minutes from now until 12, I'll take questions. So please go ahead. If somebody wants to ask, please go ahead. Feel free to throw the most uncomfortable question possible. I don't have a problem. Either I know the answer or I don't. Whichever way, I'll be honest about it. We'll start with the lady there. Yes.
Would you say Sanatana Dharma is that which makes a Hindu in India different from a Hindu in Nepal or Mauritius, and the Muslim in India different from the Muslim in Arab countries, and the Christian in India makes them different from the West?
I would have perhaps subscribed to that comfortable notion maybe a few years ago. I don't anymore. My reading of history, and I've done a fair bit of it, and it's not easy to read the history of this period because you're constantly attacked by what happened. You're constantly affected by what happened. My sense is we are rapidly losing the Sanatani identity of non-Hindus of Bharat. In the process, they are closer to their brothers and sisters outside than to us. And it is not a matter of chance, it is a matter of systematic change through their own institutions, who want them to move away as much as possible from the Sanatani identity or their Sanatani ancestry. Assuming for a moment that we were confident that the people who live here are comfortable with their Sanatani ancestry and their heritage, I don't think we would have to discuss the concept of challenges of Dharma or challenges to Dharma. The reason that this conversation has become important and the topic has become relevant is because we know that that aspect of their identity is being systematically destroyed or erased. Not just that, even those who are surviving Sanatanis are being told, you have no business being Sanatanis anymore. Because there was no concept of a Sanatana Dharma in the first place, it's an artificial creature. So while our innate peaceful tendencies may want us to put faith in these comfortable notions, I think we need a serious reality check. That has not been the state of affairs for the last 2 or 3 decades. It is certainly not the state of affairs of the present. And unless we deal with the situation, it certainly won't be the state of the future. Next. Do ladies have more questions here than the gents?
Namaste.
Namaste.
Hari Om.
Hari Om.
I truly admire you because you are candid and outspoken.
Thank you.
I have several questions, but I'll try and put them in a simplified way. If we are trying to bring change into the psychology or psychic minds of the newer generations within the Hindu community, why not try and train
The parents.
people to go to the grassroots level within the schools and other spiritual organizations to try and bring the fundamental change,
Right.
as Chinmaya Mission is doing already. The other question I have is, what is your plan towards bringing this kind of change that you are aspiring, so that the...
Sorry, I didn't get the second question. What is my what?
So that...
Plan. Okay.
Plan.
Okay.
So that the newer generations will be prouder of being Hindu instead of being brainwashed.
So I think I will start with a common answer to both questions. You have further questions?
I have one more question.
Please go on. Yes.
Have you approached the BJP government? This is not a political question because BJP represents Hinduism.
Is it? Okay.
I mean, thinking about the Ram temple
Right.
or RSS for that matter.
Okay.
Thank you.
All the words I wanted to avoid. With one sledgehammer, Brahmacharani has brought it into the conversation. But I will stick to my sankalpam of today to avoid those words, even in the answer. Because the problem is then we get fixated with certain institutions as opposed to ideas and issues. And that's one of my biggest concerns with the Hindu society. That if your loyalties are towards an organization and not to the cause, you will never comfortably point out the problems with the organization when they move away from the cause. And that is the difference between the Hindu mind and the non-Hindu mind actually. Because the non-Hindu mind uses politics to achieve its goals, whereas the Hindu mind uses our causes to achieve political goals. There's a very clear difference. And that is a fundamental manufacturing defect that we need to address. And that manufacturing defect cannot be addressed until the community says, I don't care what you call yourself as long as you deliver the goods for us. That must be the mercenary, clinical, ruthless way forward. And we are increasingly failing to do so. And which is why I made my earlier point that political victories make us very comfortable, because we equate political victories with civilizational victories. There is a very clear difference between the two. The best possible example is the Ram Janambhoomi movement, because we were not in power for 400 years or 496 years when the movement was going on. We were not in power when the first decisive victory was granted to us by the courts in 2011, where we were neither in power in Uttar Pradesh nor at the center. So clearly, if the society chooses to pursue a goal with single-minded focus and with crystal clear clarity, I'm not saying power is not important, I'm not saying power is useless. As a lawyer, I'll never make that statement, but it is possible to achieve certain goals even if you're not in power. That is the message. Therefore, what is more important? Goal, not power. Power is the means to it. That is the simple, let's say, equation that I wish to present. Now coming to your questions. One, the common answer to both your questions is, most of our solutions are trying to address the problem at the tertiary level. After people have left schools, they have left colleges, and they have formed their own mindsets with rigid mentalities, with fixed egos, with half-baked knowledge. Half-baked knowledge with fixed egos is fantastic combination for civilizational destruction. So you're right that the investment obviously has to be at the first end, which is at the primary level. But I would go a step further, which is why I started with the family, because a parent doesn't have the moral authority to speak about dharma if the child doesn't see the parent following it. I don't know how many people know Tamil here, but I would assume that Malayalam and Tamil are cognate languages, and I'll switch to Tamil just for a moment. If my parent were to ask me to do something which they have not done, I'll say, "Nee matra enna panna?" I'll turn around and simply ask that question. And I'm the kind of child who always asks that question. Uddand of the first order. So if you can convince me, you can convince others. So my point is, before we think of Hindu children, we need to have extended community services for Hindu parents and Hindu parenting. They don't know what is Nakshatram, they don't know what is Tithi, they know nothing at all. All they know is to eat when a green leaf is placed in front of them. Culture is reduced to Sadhya and nothing more. Onam is reduced to it. Festivals are reduced to it. They have no understanding whatsoever. So when their children face propaganda with respect to their festivals in schools, they have no defense mechanisms because they don't know, and when they go to their parents, they'll say, "You focus on education. Why are you so interested in culture?" So the first step is to address Hindu parenting, and the second step is perhaps slightly more controversial, but I am not new to controversy, so I'll say it. Stop sending your children to schools which don't encourage Sanatana Dharma. You are hoping that somehow this child will not succumb to peer pressure at a place where they have to make friends. They can't be seen as having different identities because individuality is not respected at that age. They are the subject of bullying and whatnot. They can't go with the vibhuti or the kumkum or whatever it is. My exhortation to Hindu organizations across the board has been, please set up more schools and make sure that the quality of your schools and institutions don't fall, because nobody should be able to point fingers at us. They have to survive the pressure and the competition of the real world outside, and they also need their cultural moorings. We have to find a way to marry both and blend both. The primary investment of every independent country post-colonization, except for Bharat, was in education. In bringing back their old education systems. We were the only country to take forward the education policy of the colonizer. Now it's okay to continue playing this blame game until 2014. I will ask this honest question: what has happened post 2014 on the education front? Now if I were an organizational loyalist, I'll say sab kuch ho gaya, everything is done. But because I'm not, I will say, what have you done? What is the concrete outcome there? What is the investment in education policy? What is the investment in defending that education policy when people accuse you of saffronization? Do you have the confidence to say, yes, it is saffronization, so what? Do you have the confidence to say that, no, we will constantly move to a defensive position to say, no, it is not saffronization, it's Indianization. As long as you don't have the confidence to defend the saffron, you have no business pontificating about Hindutva to anybody. Okay? So, which is why, to answer the first part of your first question, I share my views with anyone who is interested in the same goals and who is willing to listen. If you don't listen, dharma and karma will find a way. We will always find others. Everybody is dispensable. Dharma is indispensable, period. So, I operate with that sense of clarity. So, whenever I know that I am getting a willing audience, which is willing to at least consider, you don't need to agree with what I have to say, at least consider. Because I am saying that if you invest in education in this direction, it is also good for your own political future. There is a political incentive for it. A de-Hinduized Bharat is not going to present any political future or opportunity for both the organizations that you mentioned. So when people know that there is both a larger goal and there is also clear incentive, I would expect them to operate and act. So I'd like to see what happens post 4th of June 2024, assuming all other conditions remain the same. Next.
Hari Om,
They're
Namaskar.
very particular about time, so I'll take this as the last question.
Hari Om, Namaskar. This question is to Mr. J. Sai Deepak, an advocate.
Okay.
So it's a two-part question.
But I'll charge for it, no?
Okay. But it's an open question. I just wanted to view.
$1,200 an hour is my going rate.
So the question goes, when we talk about as the election season is going on, and when it is coming to this minority quota, what is the legal way to stop that? And if we take another part of the question, suppose the day comes when this distribution of wealth is also going on, is given in a manifesto. I'm sure that day will never come. But suppose that day comes, and again, what is the legal way of stopping that?
I'll take the second question first, not because I don't have an answer to the first. Over the last 10 years, I would say that the opposition has shown us how to stall governance. They have given us brilliant lessons at it. So should something undesirable happen in June 2024, I will draw lessons from the opposition of the last 10 years. And I will constantly go to court. I would expect the Hindu community to hit the streets. And I would expect the Hindu community to learn from everybody else. If you don't do that, my real concern, and this is not fear-mongering, is that they will actually act on every dangerous idea they have spelt out during the course of the last few months. They are capable of it. They have enough incentives for it. Beyond this, I don't want to say on that subject. As far as the first point is concerned, assuming that a few legal minds come together and define what is exactly a minority, and they present a constitutional basis for it. Whoever comes to power in June 2024, again or again, whichever way you interpret again, do they have the political will to act on the definition? I have to ask this question because most people assume that solutions lie in law. Potential solutions lie in law, but the answer lies in political will. And political will not act on your points or your issues unless they think it will cost them votes. So which is why I've tried to convey to the middle class Hindu that you are perhaps the best possible example of a human doormat. Because people walk all over you, they use you, they milk you, but you get nothing in return, either culturally or economically. Can you for once wake up? Because the bulk of the country's wealth is generated by us. they depend on us for two things: revenue, and we are the law-abiding part of the society, which respects law either because it respects it or because it doesn't have the guts to disrespect it. Okay? So these issues of culture and education must become serious issues for the middle class Hindu, along with taxes, petrol, electricity and everything else. But we are the first ones to compromise on one for the other. Please understand, those who are at the uppermost echelons of the society will typically find a way to shield them from other developments around them, because they have the resources for it, they have the connections for it. The ones at the bottommost rung of the society are fighting a different battle altogether for them to be interested in culture. And sometimes it's like, I'm already in a worse off position, what more can happen with me? The ones who are fighting the battle for culture, education and Bharat are actually the middle class Hindus, because they've grown up in a middle class mindset, therefore culture still matters to them. They still have certain conservative ideas, and I use the word conservative in a very complimentary sense, not in a negative sense. And they're interested in producing people who are educated and who generate wealth. I'm only saying, frankly speaking, you have the biggest bargaining chip on the table. And therefore, I am legitimately, openly trying to weaponize the middle class Hindu in becoming a culturally vocal Hindu and a religiously vocal Hindu who is able to present his wish list to any party that comes to power. Which means, whoever comes to power, you should be able to get your way. That is the better way forward at any point of time. That, according to me, would be the definition of Chanakya Niti. Shall I wrap this up, because I think there's another session coming? Thank you so much. Namaste. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your electrifying speech and interactive session. It really energized the room. As a token of our love, respect and appreciation, we humbly request Swami Vivekananda ji to hand over a memento to our esteemed guest, Shri J. Sai Deepak. Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you, sir, once again.